Us was having trouble down in the bottom of the boat. Thank you, Justin. And he's asleep. And the sailors come down and say, "Get up, call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us that we will not perish." And the sailors, and so that's kind of where we left off, so let's just start reading there. Then the sailors said to one another, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." You know, there is some casting of lots in the Bible. They did that. There was this kind of belief that might God might work through that. I think, isn't that the way that they replaced Judas? Something like that.
But when Christ was being crucified and his cloak,
Yeah, they cast they rolled dice, I guess, to see you do that. But to try and find out what does God want, there is this kind of, belief that somehow God might direct that process. They cast lots, and look, and behold, it fell on Jonah. So they asked him, "Tell us who's responsible for making all this trouble for us. What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" Okay, so Jonah's still, waking up from his deep sleep. He's getting all these questions. And let's look at his answer. Let's look at his answer. Verse 9, yep. "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." Now, which questions did he answer? He said who he is.
he doesn't say what he does.
Aha! He doesn't say his job, his occupation. What is his job? Proclaim the word of the Lord. Be a prophet.
But he says who his God is, and they didn't ask him that.
Yes, he does say who his God is. Yeah, I mean, it comes with the being a Hebrew. What kind of person are you? What is your country? From what people are you? It seems to be where he goes. But then he adds, who his God is. Yeah, I'm sorry, Andrew.
With how deliberate of an invasion that is, he may as well have answered, "I was born in a middle-class family."
Right. Yeah. He didn't answer their first big, what kind of work do you do? And so, right. So now when he says who his God is, they are terrified. So what kind of religious people are these sailors? Well, they know lots of gods. And they evidently have heard about the God of Israel, who led people out of slavery and conquered Egypt. And, then the people conquered the land and, set up, So there's this God, Yahweh. And remember, I worship the Lord. That is the word Yahweh. That's God's holy name. So the God of heaven who made the sea and the dry land. So what's underneath this? Let's see what Nehemiah says. "You are the Lord, you alone. You have made heaven and the heavens with their hosts, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them, and you preserve all of them. And the host of heaven worships you." God is in control, ultimately, of the wind and the waves. I can't help but think about a story in the Gospels, right? "Peace, be still." Sharon, yeah?
Well, the Mediterranean and all that area is known for having tremendous storms.
Sure.
And so these guys, their occupation were sailors.
Yep.
So they're, weren't such things as submarines.
Yeah. They're above water, but...
Right. And in those days in particular, they were very superstitious.
Yeah.
So
And
that would come into it.
And for the Hebrew people, somebody came up and mentioned this last week after class, that for the Hebrew people, the water and the sea was Scary, scary business. It was, they were very afraid of water. That was the place of the Leviathan and, evil abode, So the seafarers were particularly, even though they're very afraid of the depths. Paul.
Maybe.
Is the word worship really worship?
I worship. So it is the word for fear. Fear God. It's the Yarah, which is in Hebrew the word, like the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So I fear the Lord is actually more literal translation.
Yeah,
So
he says he fears the Lord, and they said, we're afraid.
yeah, right. Yeah, they're like, well, we're with you in that, but we're terrified. Let's see if this is the same word, Yarah. So that is, isn't it interesting how our English translations, they're trying to use the right English word to convey the meaning, but you miss that it's the same word. Yeah, I am a Hebrew. I fear the Lord.
It turns
This
out he only had
made-
the very beginnings.
What's that?
It turns out he only had the very beginnings of wisdom.
Yeah.
Because he had this ordeal to go through before he learned his error.
Yes, and that's what we're going to look at now as we go. He feared the Lord, but did he have faith? I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah.
And was this, it doesn't say, but I wonder if this was his first job to prophesy to Nineveh, or if he had, as a prophet, done it enough times.
We don't know.
No.
We are not told. So had he done other jobs? Or is this his maiden voyage, so to speak? I don't know. Yeah. So they're terrified and they ask, what have you done? They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so, even though we weren't told that he had told them, I don't think. But he, the story, it happened that, tells us that he had already told them that he was running. And he was terrified. And so they're terrified. And they making the assumption, what have you done? So, cause and effect. This is human nature, religion. We do something, God causes this. So cause and effect, religion. Let's see how far that goes. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, what should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us? Jonah did something to create the bad storm. What are they going to do to get it to stop? Jonah says, pick me up and throw me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that the great storm has come upon you.
It
Okay.
seems like a bizarre, sudden adoption of responsibility.
Yes. Yeah. He's running. He's terrified. He doesn't want to go to the Ninevites. And yet, he knows that God has brought this storm because of what he's doing. And he does seem to say, yeah, it's on me. It's on me. He's taking responsibility, I think.
Instead of asking to be thrown over, he could have been a better witness and prayed.
Right? Yeah.
You'd probably get the same answer.
He'd probably, yeah. I think that's really interesting, though, Gloria and Paul. What could he have done? Do you think he's kind of taking responsibility, but yet he's not like, okay, God, I'm sorry, let the storm down, I'll go.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
What would Jonah rather have than go to the Ninevites?
Yeah.
It seems like a major part of of the story of him is his disbelief, right? So maybe he thought, toss me in, and it'll be a bluff, they wouldn't even bother to do it.
Oh, yeah, maybe he didn't think they'd actually throw him over. I don't know, yeah.
Well, and maybe he figured, since the Ninevites were so well known for how awful they were, then he figured if God saved them, they'd just turn around and come after the Israelites. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, he may have been thinking the Lord, well, we'll see. Well, he's going to tell us why he didn't want to go, ultimately. But he would rather die.
Yeah, he really wasn't.
He would rather die. He doesn't want these poor sailors to die. We'll give him that. But he would rather die than do what God told him to do. I think that's quite something. Sharon, and then right over.
Picking up on what Gloria said, I can just imagine he knew the horrors of what the Ninevites did to their people. I mean, I would rather, if it were me, which way do you want to go? Do you want to drown, or do you want to have them ripped into pieces?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that is the glaring.
Yeah, he might have been. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
a nice picture.
Yeah.
Maybe, he didn't wanna look at his own faults, and admit to the fact that he failed God and, do I have to take this path? That, maybe death seemed more welcoming, or the thought of death, than having to face his own demons and look at himself in the mirror and go, this is what my life has come to, this is the wreckage I have made of my life, because I've been there. I've been in the belly of a fish.
Right.
My name is Fisher. Been there 50 years. 3 days is nothing. I've been there 50 years. So maybe he just, he knew who God was.
Yeah.
He knew. And he had that foundation, but he just maybe thought, yeah, they were unworthy, but I'm unworthy. He's unworthy
Yeah.
to carry that message, first of all. And he's also unworthy because he loathes himself, because he disobeyed God in his own sin,
Right.
in his own
Yeah.
looking in the mirror. So he'd rather just go and take me to, there's a name for it.
Sheol.
Locker, the locker.
Sheol.
When you're a sailor, though, they call it Davy Jones's locker.
Davy Jones' locker. Yeah, that's right. The
Yeah,
Mariners.
locker, so
Yeah.
Davy Jones's locker, basically,
Yeah.
is Sheol. So,
Yeah. Very helpful. Very helpful.
I'm surprised that one of the sailors or the captain wouldn't have said, hey, couldn't you have told us this before?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We just throw all of our cargo for a reason we're out here. Yeah. Yeah. But see, this is a lovely, yeah. So, look at these great sailors. Instead, the men did their best to row back to the land. We don't want to throw them out, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to Yahweh, "Please, Yahweh, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Yahweh, have done as you pleased." So
They're pleading to God.
they're pleading to God, which is interesting because they're not Hebrews, but they believe in lots of gods, so they're praying to this God, to the all-powerful God that they're clearly terrified of. But they also know then if they kill Jonah, they're going to be in trouble for that too.
Their own lives are in danger, but they're working overtime to try to spare his.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Right. That's exactly right. They're trying to spare his, and they're worried because they know killing him is wrong. And, they're in trouble either way. They're either going to die from the storm, or they're going to die from God's judgment for killing Jonah, for killing his prophet. And so what do they cry out? Don't let us die for taking this man's life. Don't hold us accountable.
So this is what you do when you're between a rock and a hard place.
Yes. Right? It is a rock in a hard place. I'm thinking about those rocks in a hard place that I've been experiencing, and so let me just say a prayer right now. Absolutely, Paul. I know I've mentioned this a lot, but in social ethics, one of the things I remember from my Cal Lutheran days 40 years ago, whatever it was, can you believe it? That's impossible. We worked with ethical dilemmas where you are stuck between two wrongs. Like, if I do this, that's wrong, but if I don't do it, it's also wrong. And sometimes we find ourselves in those situations. There's a new movie coming out on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I think Angel Studios, although when we were in Germany, our guide told us that it's a big uproar because everybody over there disagrees with the way the movie portrays him. Yeah. So, watch it. I'm going to watch it and see, but we tend to make of our heroes whatever we want, so we'll see. But yeah, there's a big article I saw that had all these scholars of Bonhoeffer and signing, this is not the true Bonhoeffer or whatever. So, but nonetheless, I learned about Dietrich Bonhoeffer first, as you've heard me say before, I'm sure, to study ethical dilemmas, because he was stuck between, do I participate in a plot to kill Hitler, which was mainly for him providing information. I forget, there was a family connection or something, and he had so he was providing intel, I guess you could say. And it was discovered, the plot was discovered, and he was imprisoned, and then finally, just tragically, just before the war ended and the Allies came through, he was I think, hung. But he knew trying to kill Hitler is killing a human being, and that's wrong. And he did not say, well, God will say it's okay because the circumstance. He said, he knew that no, thou shalt not murder. But at the same time, he couldn't not do it because of what Hitler was doing. So there's the ethical dilemma. Well, yeah, the sailors are in an ethical dilemma here. They're in a rock and a hard place. And they cry out to God, give us a break, because what are we going to do? Stephanie?
And they're kind of praying for forgiveness before they commit the sin.
Right. That's true.
Which is a little...
Don't hold us accountable. Yeah. Kimberly, thank you.
Oh gosh. Oh, you said between a rock and a hard place. And how do some people pronounce Iraq? Iraq, between Iraq and a hard place. That's what came to my mind when you said that.
Wow.
I think there's so many more nuggets in the Bible in these end times than people realize.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, I just went,
Yeah. Interesting.
war. It's not the
Interesting.
war.
Love it. Good, interesting connection. Well, that's the part of the world where Jonah's headed to, Kimberly. So good. All right. So why don't we pause here? Let's see. Let's finish the paragraph. Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. And at this, the men greatly feared the Lord. So now they have that same fear, same word, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. All right, interesting.
That's an ironic way of him playing prophet, is it not?
Yeah, he was not wanting to play prophet, but God was using him to get through to these sailors, huh? Yeah.
Just as he will get through to the Ninevites.
And he will, yeah. Let's see here. Let's go over to Luther. Let's see what Luther has to say. A lot of good stuff here on these last chapters or so. Let's see. No, it went too far back. What verse were we in there? Okay. Huh. I have a bunch of stuff underlined. Here we go. Okay, so let's see. So come, let us cast lots. So, on the other, when you are in urgent distress, when you have been captured, and when it is impossible for you either to work or to earn daily bread, under such circumstances it is not tempting God if you hope for food from heaven. And so a judgment about casting lots must be given for all cases at this point. Those sailors were impelled by the greatest distress, and they were not able to do anything else. So Luther's cutting them a break for casting lots. Although Jonah was well aware that he was guilty of a great evil, still he cast lots with them in the hope that somehow he would escape. Our incompetent commentators, Luther, who suppose that they become holy only by works, know nothing about faith, nothing about spiritual temptations. Otherwise, they would make more sensible judgments. I've given sufficient warning about this at the beginning of this prophet. In principle, a deed done by some people at one time does not have the same worth in God's sight as the same deed done by other people at other times. Now, he's going to wrestle with the casting of lots here. And he's given them a break. So let's see. Here we go.
My sins aren't as bad as your sins.
It's like telling God, I wish you would do this, but I understand you'll do what you'll do.
Right, yeah. And when we're in the foxhole, so to speak, we're going to cry out. We're going to go for whatever we need to do. Another thing, although Jonah alone was the cause of the storm, nevertheless all these men who were with him were in equal danger of life and were suffering the same punishment as Jonah. This is an instance of what we have often said, that one ungodly person often causes an entire state and whole nation to perish and to be in great misery. The scriptures are full of examples of this. In this way, on account of Achan, who had stolen an accursed thing, the Lord afflicted the people of Israel in a terrible way, as we see in Joshua 7. On the other hand, the single man Moses often accounted for the safety of the entire nation of Israel. That's interesting.
It reminds me of boot camp. You're each responsible for keeping the bunch straight.
Right, there you go. And if you blow it, your whole company suffers. Thus, the author of the Epistle of James in chapter 5:17 says, Elijah was a man of like nature with ourselves, and he prayed fervently that it might not rain, and for 3 years and 6 months it did not rain on the earth. These things are examples of God's judgment, who does not deal unjustly, although it seems quite different to us. Now isn't that the truth? We look at God's judgments and we go, that's not fair, that's not right. It seems to us it isn't fair, but, it's maybe a little presumption of us to get into that position. Yeah. All right, so now I think we're in the whale now, right?
Oh,
We haven't? Where were we in? We're in chapter 3. So let's. Okay. No, I got it. That's where we are. Okay, so that's what I thought we were at the end of chapter. Okay, there was something in Luther here I think I missed, and I wanted to for you to hear. So just hold on. This is good.
Pastor Bill,
Yes?
in this study Bible, there's a lot of really interesting information to me, but one of them is looking at this whole story as a picture, a graphic depiction, they call it. It's kind of like an analogy that it says it's like the exquisite miniature of the pagan world of many nations represented by the sailors, threatened by the judgments of God, represented by the storm, with Israel in their midst, represented by Jonah. If Jonah, Israel, does not fulfill his mission, the sailors or the nations will die calling on their gods. And because he is rebelling against his mission, he must die to save them. All Although Jonah's mission was to bring God's warning of a pending judgment to the pagan world, his refusal to go to Nineveh brings these pagan sailors into peril.
Right. Nice.
Kind of a salvation thing that Israel's supposed to be a blessing to the world.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a parallel, I guess.
Yeah, so is it a parable talking about Israel's mission to the world?
Yeah.
Is one way to think about it. And I think that can be fruitful. That's helpful. We're going to have to work on what is this book ultimately for? And what, it's, Kimberly,
Yeah, I just wanted, before we get too far from away from it, when they were casting lots, to show you how far into paganism and unbelief they were, casting lots is a form of divination, which is a form of witchcraft, so if you didn't know that. And they're expecting, which I guess would be what you'd say, taking their chances with other gods, because that's what it was for. And, excuse me, Jonah actually participated in that. That is a no-no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
show the benefits.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've struggled with this, and it's kind of like God says, okay, I'll make it work out. The way, even though, it is a form of chance, really, and maybe indeed witchcraft or whatever, but,
Well, there's
yeah.
the Urim and Thummim too.
What's
So
that?
There's the Urim and Thummim too, so is that witchcraft? No.
Is that what? I'm
The
still,
Urim and Thummim?
I don't know anything about what that is.
I might be.
Yeah,
It's
that the
Urim.
priests use to determine answers from God.
Oh,
The-
okay.
Yeah,
And that's given a pass,
Urim and
so.
Thummim or
Oh, are you
something
talking about the, yes, no?
that they used to have
Yes.
in their
Okay.
God's actually,
breastplates or something like that.
Okay, yeah, Gloria.
Well, there's one lesson we can learn from this, is that when you disobey God, or you sin, you aren't the only one affected.
Right.
And many others are affected.
That's true. We affect other people with what we do. Boy, howdy. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were in our small group, we were studying about Abraham and Lot, and how Abraham went down to Egypt and caused all kinds of trouble because, he lied that Sarah was his sister and so on and so forth. But Lot went with him, and he saw all the grandeur that could be his if he got into a big society. That's why he wanted to go to Sodom and Gomorrah, because it was a richer place.
Right. Yeah.
Then he went downhill there.
Yeah.
So it was, Abraham going astray, that's a lot astray at that point, and that happens all the time.
Sure. Yeah. My mom always said, Billy, you better be careful who you hang out with. When I was in high school. Audrey, you were trying to get a word in.
Well, it's interesting too that the sailors refer to him when they're praying to God or calling on him, that they refer to Jonah as an innocent man.
That's what they're thinking, right? Yeah. And this
And
is.
then are they accusing God then of causing the storm, which he did, but.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew. Yeah.
Do you recall that Nineveh, the Syrians are the enemy? And so when God tells him, I will destroy them unless you tell them to change their ways, part of his hesitation could be his response kind of like, oh, darn, would you?
Yeah. So how about if I just don't go and then. Yeah. Luther puts his finger on something here. They seek aid where they can. This is talking about the arise, call upon your God. They flee to Jonah, about whom they had been totally unconcerned before they came into danger. This is the way of human reason is. It cannot act differently in trial. Similarly, when they were hard pressed in our conscience, when we were hard pressed in our consciences by sin, we ran to the monks or to this or to that person to find consolation. This way the sailors flee to Jonah, for reason thinks that it will be saved by the intercession of another person. Okay, so Luther's, he's putting his take on what's going on with the sailors. They're using human reason. There's a cause and effect. And then so let's go to Jonah. Let's figure this out. But faith, on the other hand, as it rejects no one, also trusts no human being, but depends on God alone, on whom it calls in need. So they haven't quite yet called upon God yet. So I think that struck me, the sense of human reason. And what is the sailor's religion? It's reason. They're reasoning this through, and they're making reasonable deductions, but they do not have the word. They do not have Jonah preaching to them what he should be preaching yet. So, Sharon, and then we'll keep reading.
Well, I'm thinking that these sailors so far have shown some reverence for Jonah's God and for the Lord. And so they haven't referred back to their gods other than the first one we knew that they had other gods. So now, the fact that they have been declaring that kind of is showing what's been going on. When they throw Jonah in, it calms down and they offer a sacrifice to God, because I think they are seeing cause and effect. This God made things happen, our other gods forget them.
Right, right. And so what do they do in there is when we think, what is, I think it's a positive thing that they turn and do this. That shows like, wow, they're getting something. But it also shows us as human beings that what we think God wants is our sacrifice. Give a sacrifice. This is what you do. That's what you used to do. That's what all religion is human beings sacrificing to God. But is that faith? Is a question. So really good, please.
But they didn't give credit to their gods at all.
No.
For any of these things that were happening on a big scale.
Sure, and it's kind of like the battle between Elijah and Jezebel with the prophet, where God triumphs over all these other gods. When we see that happening here, for
So
sure.
we don't know if maybe we never find out the rest of the story. We don't know if that made them much more aware of wanting to choose
Yeah,
God.
did they kind of convert and become
We wouldn't know
believers
that.
in the one true God? Yeah.
It's interesting because we don't know here, but they either never asked Jonah, what did you do? Why are you running away? Or he didn't say, this is what's going on, because if they knew, they probably would have just thrown him overboard, because what, you disobeyed your God, whereas all they have a lot of little gods, but if they're told what to do, they think they're told what to do by their God, they will obey.
So I think, though, supposedly up here it says that he did tell them. They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so.
Yeah, but they didn't say why.
But they didn't know why, and they didn't know his mission. That's correct, Audrey. Good. Yeah.
Well, I bet they watched for the news later.
Yeah.
See what happened to them.
All right, let's keep going. Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights.
So often we see, my version says, but the Lord, and so often we say, but God.
Yeah.
And He's in control.
Yeah.
He's always in control.
Yeah. God is not thwarted by our human actions. That's awesome. That's a beautiful thing. So now we're going to get a prayer from Jonah inside the big fish.
Why isn't he being digested?
Why isn't he being digested? Says the scientific mind of the 21st century.
Or drown, because you're inside a vessel way under the water, and how do you get oxygen?
Yeah. How do you breathe? How do you do all of that?
It's not like
These
a big open living room.
our 21st century questions want to know.
Well, the fish has to eat, so
We would have waited.
Yeah. I'm not belittling your question. I'm not. I mean, but these are the things that come up. Linda, I appreciate you saying that very much. We like, how did he survive? What is going on? But he's praying inside the belly of the fish. Now, one way to come at that question is to go back to what Kathy's Bible said, and said, this is more of a story about Israel, it's not a historical happening. Now, I'm not saying you're saying that, I'm just saying that's one way to deal with it, is to say it's like a fable. It's like it's a metaphor, and it didn't really physically happen. Like Pinocchio or something, yeah.
Why let the details kill the metaphor?
Why let the details kill the metaphor? And we're not going to do that for sure. Now, but I got to tell you that at this point, that what some people call Bible historians, or I like to say ultra-critical Bible commentators, will quickly say it's foolish to believe this actually really happened. And I get that, and I'm okay with that. In fact, although I'm gonna pull back into history, though. I'm not gonna let you completely off the hook on this one, because I think it is a metaphor of some respects. Let's go to the New Testament. Let's go. Let's see here. Is this the spot I've got? Come on.
Well, Jesus straight out says directly and overtly, this is a metaphor when I say this, and he says the next thing. And so
Here we go.
it's not as though the Bible never speaks.
All right. Andrew started to quote what Jesus said, and that's what we're going to do. So, but what happened to I had this exactly on Jonah.
So it
Okay,
sort of breaks
so
the third wall in this sense.
let's see. Where are you, Jonah? Oh, book. Here we go. I got. Let me get there. Where's Jonah? There, thank you. Okay, so this is a cool little tool I have. So Matthew 12:40, just as Jonah was in the 3 days and the 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So the New Testament, Jesus actually, is saying, what happened to Jonah is going to happen to the Son of Man. And of course, that's the term he most often refers to himself as. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And behold, something greater than Jonah is here. So we're getting to the end of the book now, but interesting. We've got the same thing in Luke. I think that's a parallel passage. Colossians. Okay, well, he was buried and raised on the 3rd day in accordance with the scriptures. Well, what scriptures? Have you ever wondered that? Paul says, and Jesus says the same thing about himself, that I'm going to, and he explained, well, where does it say the Son of Man is going to be buried 3 days and rise again? Well, it doesn't exactly. But they see Jonah's story prefiguring what's going to happen to Christ. So we have to be careful, though, then, about saying it didn't really happen.
Oh, I didn't say that.
I know you didn't. I'm not saying you didn't. You were just asking a question. How did he breathe? Or how did he eat? Or what did he, And, we want to know these things, and I get it. You should know that this was one of the test questions when the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod kicked out 90% of the professors from the St. Louis Seminary in 1970. Do you believe Jonah really happened? If they said no, you're out. Because see, the Missouri Synod there was a backlash against historical critical study of the Bible. And again, I grew up with that. So, I grew up with that. I was trained in all of that. and I still come out of that school to some degree, although I think it's gone way too far in many respects. But you look at literary means, you look at historicals. I think all of that's a good way to look at the Bible, but it has its limits. And of course, I think it goes too far. But the Missouri Synod was freaked out about that, and they, any scholars that went down this road, they said, there's the door. And so, I personally, this is what I say, if Jesus compares that event to his death and resurrection, why can't I believe that somehow God got him through being in the belly of a fish?
I think he did. He probably came out really bleached.
He was really bleached and had lots of stomach acid on it. Yeah, Bill, yeah.
Perhaps as they were throwing him over, he grabbed some scuba gear.
Yes, he grabbed some scuba gear. He had some way of doing it. See, these are the things we want to know. And I don't know how he survived, but I don't want to give up on it. But now I'm not going to kick you out of church if you don't believe that it actually happened. Don't worry, Joyce. So, I get it. It is a metaphor. It is a metaphor. Okay, I'm going over to Paul and then over here. And then here.
I was thinking that fish wasn't just any old fish. That fish from the beginning of its life was being prepared for this very thing.
Yeah.
So it had a divine appointment with Jonah.
Okay, there you go. It was fulfilling its created purpose. The Lord appointed. Yes. Good point.
Okay.
Yeah. Please.
With God, nothing is impossible. Look at everybody in this room.
Yeah.
We will tell the story.
Right. That's a good point. With God, all things are possible. So we don't want to limit God. But for those who struggle with, is that really the point that it actually happened? I'm fine with having some ambiguity there. But yeah, I don't want to put it past God that this could happen. Please.
Well, quite a long time ago, I don't remember where this came up, the same thing about, was there actually a fish? Did people actually get scooped up in the jaws or whatever, even temporarily? And so there were people who went out to research that and find any possible evidence for that. And what they found was, yes, there are very rare stories where people have kind of gotten
Ingested, yeah.
Yeah, inside and didn't get out right away, and when they got out, their skin was all crinkly and like a leech,
Yeah.
and so that also added to their story of why he looked so bizarre to the Ninevites.
Yeah.
And
Well,
why they paid attention to him,
okay.
because he not only had the message, he had a whole look at him
sure.
and his skin, which would make sense.
He had a
That's as far as I know about it, but I just remember.
Yeah, he had a different kind of spa treatment. No, I mean, this is what we do. We start going, well, are there any examples of this in history? And we do find some examples where maybe something like this happened, to try and work it through Mary and then Kimberly. Yeah.
I had taken must have been in another Bible class.
Sure.
And one of my notes said that Jonah became a sign of judgment.
A sign of judgment.
A sign of judgment, and I'm not sure how that fits in. I suppose he judged whether he was going to disobey God.
Well, we see God's judgment on Jonah here, don't we?
Yeah.
And Jonah will become, when he preaches, a sign of God's judgment on the Ninevites if they do not repent. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if it said and he was rescued by a passing boat, it's the whole story without me.
Oh, sorry, Stephanie, yeah.
I think it's interesting your translation says, now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah. Usually when I think of provision, it's something you need and want, right?
Yeah.
Apparently God thought Jonah needed the fish, but Jonah probably didn't think he needed the fish.
Yeah. Jonah probably didn't think he needed the fish, no. And this fish is provided and appointed. Some translations evidently say appointed.
Pastor, he said
Mine says appointed.
I'm sorry?
He sent a submarine.
He sent a submarine. One of those vessels they launched to.
Oh, this is your, oh, I
And
see.
the Lord, so the ESV says the Lord appointed or had appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah. The NIV that I'm reading out of that the Lord provided. The Hebrew word means divide into parts, count, reckon, to count on, remit, to apportion, allot, send. So it has that sense. So like divide into parts. In other words, God, that's like, you're for this purpose type of thing. So now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So yeah, please over here, Kim.
Thank you. I was just reading as you were talking, because I hate doing that, but I don't have my Bible. I was trying to get some other facts about Jonah. And the one I'm gonna just comment on, other than the Sheol, 3 days and 3 nights, he's calling on God, but the sharks and fish have been known, this is what I just found out, I thought this was interesting. Well, and also a whale, if they're not digesting something at the moment, whatever's alive in their belly will stay alive. That's the whale, that's how those things are. But it also said it's a great aquatic animal. Maybe it was a submarine, as I was just telling everyone. Back then. Who knows? But I think he was coated with something as he's in this air pocket. What I was going to say was fish and sharks have been known to have entire human bodies undigested when they catch the animal and they cut it open. There's like a whole seal in there, or a whole human body,
Yeah.
or a whole whatever they ate, undigested, fully.
So therefore we can believe it. Yeah, Bill.
Perhaps what it was a time travel. Like the one we have that said, you see that we just got back from 2065, you're still working on I-5 in Tacoma?
I love it. Okay, one more and then we'll keep
I'm
reading.
so sorry, but when he said that, it made me think of, so maybe, just maybe, because there's eight resurrections I just read in the Bible. So Jesus is, I think he's the ninth. So perhaps Jonah actually physically died.
All right, let's think about that.
Fourth.
That's something for us to think about. What happens for Jonah in the whale? Now we're going to hear a prayer, so he didn't die right away, or maybe he already died. What is going on? What is this whale? And again, let's go back. We've done our nice little, we're 21st century people, how does this happen, and that's good, I'm not going to let go of the historicity of this event in some way, shape, or form personally, but because I don't want to be kicked out of the Missouri Synod, but even though I'm not in the Missouri Synod. But I also think Jesus says, hey, what happened to Jonah is going to happen to me. So that gives it more weight to me, what Jesus has to say about it. So personally, that's a big one for me. But nonetheless, so it's good that we did this, but now Jonah's going to be in the whale, and now we're going to ask ourselves, what is this for? What is happening for Jonah? I can tell you ahead of time that the way the church has traditionally, especially before Luther, viewed this as, well, God's putting Jonah through the trial that he needs to in order to get him to do what he needs to do. And I don't know. Let's wonder about that. Okay, let's read. So now he says, in my distress I called to the Lord. Now that's Psalm 118, Psalm 18, Psalm 120. I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead, I called for help. Okay, so Kimberly, this is good. So Psalm 118. Now the realm of the dead is Sheol. So Hebrews, when you go far enough back in the Old Testament, there was a sense that Sheol was just the place that dead people go. It's not heaven. It's not necessarily hell. some people say that the concept of life after death comes out much later, but Jesus, I think, thwarts that when they ask him. Remember the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they believed different about the resurrection of the dead. The Sadducees didn't believe in a resurrection. And so they're trying to test Jesus. Remember this story? And like the guy, a woman is married to a man and he dies. And so as Levitical law says, his brother took her as his wife, so she'll be taken care of. And then that guy dies, and then his brother also took. And then by the time she dies, she's had like 4 husbands. And so the Sadducees say, whose husband in the afterlife will this be? And Jesus says, you foolish people, you're not married in heaven and all this stuff. So he answers their question, but they would come at him at it in a number of times. And one place I love what he says is God, I thought God was the God of Abraham, and Isaac and Jacob. Is he the God of the dead or the living? So in essence, he's saying that those guys are alive. Whoa, okay, so there is something to this view that there's something after this life. But yes, the Hebrew term Sheol. So in my distress I called the Lord. He answered me from deep in the realm of the dead, from Sheol. So this is where Jonah is.
So he kind of died, and on the 3rd day he rose again.
That's what Kimberly's saying. There's these kind of pre-resurrection stories. It doesn't actually. I don't think it says that he actually died, but he's crying out from the place of the dead.
Well, of the grave.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. Okay. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry. You hurled me into the depths. See Psalm 8. You have put me in the depths of the pit, in the regions dark and deep. That sounds like Sheol to me. Into the very heart of the seas. And the currents swirled about me, and your waves and breakers swept over me. It's an amazing description of him, I said, I have been banished from your sight. So, where, is God's sight still upon the place of the dead? That's what Jonah thought. Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. So look at that. There's a sense of, I've been thrown down into the depths, but yet I will look again toward the temple. Do you remember Job? There's a passage in Job where it says, my skin has thus been destroyed, but yet in my flesh I shall see God. That's another ancient resurrection, foretelling, I guess you could say, of life after death, etc. So even though he's down there, he's going to look again. The engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. That sounds pretty real.
So this kind of goes along with that old saying that there's no atheists in foxholes.
Right.
There's no atheists in whales.
Right. There's no atheists in whales, or he's not even in the whale yet.
Note it says fish, not whales. So
Yes,
it's not very precise. So
it is
if
not.
we're really analytical about this, we really don't know what this is.
Yeah, we don't know what this is. Is this the one-time appointed creature, like Paul said, that had the ability to do this? We don't know. We want to say whale because it had to be a pretty big fish, So, I should go get you my little. That's okay. All right, I'll bring that in next week. I have a fun little puppet. I have a whale with Jonah. Yeah, so I'll have to get that. Let's see. So I've been banished. I look at the engulfing waters threatened me. The deep surrounded me. Seaweed was wrapped around my head. I read that. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. The roots of the mountains sank down. The earth beneath barred me in forever. This sounds like a prison, doesn't it? But there's the but God, Gloria and Ethel May. But you, Yahweh, my God, brought my life up from the pit. Again, this is, I think Kimberly's question, is this Jonah dying and rising, is an important one to think about. And I had not really thought about that in that regard, but I'm liking it. But you, O Lord, you brought my life up from the pit. And this is, again, in Hebrew, the pit is often another way of saying Sheol. Will it go down to the bars of Sheol? Shall we descend together into the dust? So these are some passages that refer to the pit and Sheol being the same thing. When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple. It's interesting that the temple comes in here, doesn't it? Now this is Jonah's in the northern kingdom. Is there, I wonder what your Bible helps have to say. Is there a temple yet? What year was Jonah supposed? I think he's of the northern kingdom, and I'm not sure there's a southern kingdom. Solomon hasn't built the temple itself. But the temple, of course, is not necessarily the temple in Jerusalem. It's got the tabernacle, God's dwelling place. My life was that, but you heard my prayer that rose to you in your holy temple. So let's look at Psalm here, probably help us out. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes see, his eyelids test the children of man. So in other words, God's dwelling place. Yeah, it isn't necessarily an earthly temple. Audrey and then Andrew.
I was just looking at my notes.
Yeah.
And it said, the same note of hopeful expectation found in the prayers of the psalm. Temple, capital T, here probably refers to the temple in Jerusalem, while temple, little t, refers to God's heavenly temple.
There you go.
Yeah.
The Israelites held these two residences of God in inseparable association.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Andrew, you had a...
Given that Jonah's overall mission is to save fallen Nineveh and these parallels to Christ, and this after Jonah is descended into death for 3 days, you might say, are we Nineveh? You know, Jesus saving us, are we Nineveh in this situation?
Yeah. Where do we fit in this situation? I think we are Nineveh. I really do. Yeah, please.
Going with Audrey's thing, it says a background, in the half century during which the prophet Jonah ministered, which was 800 to 750 BC,
Right.
a significant event affected the northern kingdom of Israel. King Jeroboam II restored the traditional borders, ending almost a century of sporadic seesaw conflict between Israel and Damascus.
Yes. Right. So the borders of northern Israel, and so where are they worshiping? They're worshiping on Mount Horeb, I believe. So I don't know if that's right, but yeah.
It's maybe just referring to the place where we meet God.
Yeah, exactly. So his prayer goes before and goes up to God's holy temple, and you know, so this great cry from Jonah in the belly of Sheol, in this creature that, you know, as he cries out, he's, regardless of whether if he's in the belly of the great fish or not, what he really is saying he's in Sheol, he's in the pit, he's in the bottom, and he cries out, but yet he has hope that God's going to restore him. Andrew asked if, we're Nineveh. I think we are, but I think we're also Jonah. Because I think we land on both those, I think. Yeah. Well, let's keep going. Oh, no, sorry.
I was going to say, yes, please keep going so you read to the end of chapter 2 so we go out with a good taste in our mouth.
Perfect. When my life was every way, I remember the Lord prayed. Those who cling to worthless idols turn away from God's love for them. Wow. How can I go past that? That's Kesed, by the way. That's that loyalty, faithfulness, loving kindness word. But I, with shouts of grateful praise, will sacrifice to you. What have I vowed? I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah out into dry land. You don't like Ethel May thought that was a nice ending. I think that is a great spot to quit because we are over time now, actually, as I see. But let me just make a comment here that I want to dig down in. I want to see what Luther has to say about this verse. I will say salvation comes from the Lord. Who's he going to say that to? Actually, yeah, what has he vowed? I will sacrifice. So he's going to sacrifice to God. So what is he? Has he died and was he been raised? Did he just learn something here? This is what we're going to have to wrestle with as we go forward next week. What happened to Jonah in the whale?
With this fresh resolution, that's when he approaches Nineveh. So he has this fresh resolution and perspective that God saves.
He does. Or does he? I'm sorry, I can't hear when. Yeah.
I think he's confessing his disobedience and renewing his commitment to the Lord.
Yeah.
Big turnaround.
It's quite a turnaround. It's quite a dying and rising. Yeah.
Kind of in modern times, I would think this is such a prayer of despair, the first part of it.
Yes.
But towards the end, there is hope.
I think that's exactly right. This is a classic lament psalm or prayer. And the laments in the scripture start out with, where are you, God? How long? But then it doesn't end that way. It's like, but I turn to you. I still hope in you. You're my salvation. So you still turn to God and God does deliver. Salvation comes from the Lord. Maybe that's the front and center of the whole book right there. And so the word of the Lord's going to come to Jonah a second time and tell him to go. And now Jonah goes. And so that's where we'll pick it up next week. Okay, thank you. Great comments, great feedback, great work. He's a God of all kinds of other chances, huh?